We talk food and we talk preparedness. We even talk current events. But today, the most important thing that you could be thinking about when you talk about taking care of your family is water. So do you have access to water? What are the mistakes that we make when we store water? How are the best ways to store water? How much do we need of water? Today's video is going to be good because we're going to talk about the things that we should be doing and not doing, the mistakes that most people make, and then the best ways of storing water. And we're going to talk about things that can help you if you don't have a lot of space, things if you have tons of space. We're going to walk through it today. I think today is going to be a good video because food's important, money's important, gold's important, land's important, animals are important, but water is the key to it all. Let's jump into it today. I think today's video is going to be good, and it starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so much for being here today. Please, if you could, just go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell. Really give us a thumbs up if you like this content. It does help us share to other individuals, and we're hoping that we can build a wise community, understanding the best ways to take care of our family. So if you do like this content, let us know by a thumbs up and tell us what you think about the video. If you don't agree with it, let us know some of your thoughts on it and how the community can get wiser through what you have to say. So let's jump into today, all about water, how to store it, how not to store it, how much do we need, and what are some alternate sources of ways to make sure that we're taking care of our families. So first, let's jump into how much do we actually need. Studies show that a human being, one person, needs to put up and store 3 quarts to a gallon for consumption each and every day. Now, this is not talking about anything else other than pure consumption. Now, a lot of the comments I get is, well, I don't even drink that much now. Well, you should be, for one thing, but you are probably also getting it through other drinks that you're taking in, coffees and liquids and things like that. Now let's hone into it, because we talked about the other day, we don't need to stockpile things like sodas. I mean, it's not a really good thing at all. So we need to be looking at water only. How much do we need to consume a day per person? 3 quarts to a gallon. We always say a gallon at least here in our home. We strive to drink 1 gallon to 2 gallons daily because we do believe that's good for our consumption. Now let's jump into other uses for water per day. What about cooking? What about hygiene? Studies show that cooking, you need at least 1 quart a day. A lot of things have liquid already, but if you're using freeze-dried foods or stored up foods or dehydrated foods, you may even need more water. So per person, you need to have on hand about another ½ gallon at least, 2 quarts, dealing with food consumption, rehydrating food, making sure that you are heating up your food, cooking your food. So if we say 1 gallon to drink, a ½ gallon to make sure that we're cooking our food or rehydrating our food, so far we're up to 1.5 gallons. Hygiene and sanitation. Our skin is the biggest organ and tissue mass on our body. We have to take care of it. Well, the ways we take care of it is by cleaning it and making sure that we're doing all we can to sanitize our body. Studies show on a weekly basis we use about an average of 1 gallon a day of water for hygiene. Now, most people can run a longer bath or shower. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about rationing here. We're talking about brushing our teeth, sponge bathing off, or taking a bath quick and as little as water as possible. But it's important. If we don't take care of our teeth, if we don't take care of our skin, it's going to cause breakdown. So if you say, okay, I need at least another 1 gallon to 2 gallons a day for hygiene and sanitation per person, that's a lot of water. So far, you're up to 3 or 4 gallons a day per person. Now, is that doable? Is that feasible? Is that something that I can store up when I don't have a lot of room? Let's talk about now, how can we store it, and what are the mistakes that most people make when they talk about storing? Now, before we jump into that, now say you have a creek, a lake, a well. Those are great aspects to have. Let's talk about creeks and ponds, lakes, rivers, all that right now. Steady flow of water is a great asset, one of the biggest benefits. Also, rain catchment. Those are wonderful benefits, and you need to be doing those and utilizing natural waters. But what about the times that all of a sudden the water gets tainted, or it has chemicals in it, or it's not the best quality? That's things to think about. Think about a crap hits the fan situation. What about sewage and how it drains into the waterways? Is your water safe when it comes to your rivers, creeks, streams, and so forth? Even though I have a creek, even though I have a lake, I don't want to depend on that as my drinking water or my sanitation water. Now we can boil it, yes, that's big discussions there. But sometimes there's areas that have PFOS in it, there's areas that have certain chemicals in it that treatment cannot get it out. And our bodies can only take so much of that chemical without causing deterioration or some kind of carcinogenic agents going into our body to cause us cancer. Rainwater catchment, rivers, creeks, all that's great assets. But let's learn not to just fully depend on that. Let's learn to have the filters like Life Straws or Sawyer filters or whatever you believe in. That's a great source to have, and you need to have those things and have that as an asset to utilize when you can. But when it all goes down, you still got to go back to stockpiled water. Here we have those accesses, but I also stockpile water. Now let's jump into a well right quick. A well, my well is about 150 foot deep, but I'm hitting water around 15 to 25 foot deep. I'm in a very low area of South Mississippi. We're not far from lowlands and creeks and rivers and kind of like at the start of a little river here. So we've been blessed to have a very shallow well. But all of a sudden power goes out. How do you run it? Do you have a solar generator? Do you have a propane generator? Those are great things to have. Do you have a manual hand pump? We use the Legacy Food Storage hand pump. It's a phenomenal hand pump. I've got a video on using this pump and how easy it is to utilize it. But again, what if water's tainted? What if all of a sudden your well is 300 foot deep and you don't have a manual hand pump to it? Or you don't have access to a solar generator, propane generator? Yes, those are good to have. You need to have generators, you need to have hand pumps. Just like the rivers and creeks, what if? Natural waterways are wonderful. Have the filters for it. But if all of a sudden it gets tainted. Second, we talk about the wells. Such a benefit. One of my biggest assets on my farm is my well. Any person that has a home with a well would probably tell you the same thing. But you have to make sure you have alternative energy sources or a manual water pump just in case. Now those two things are all great. But now let's talk about storage. Let's talk about putting water up, how we do it, and also a lot of the mistakes that most people make. So how do most people buy water? Well, they either buy it in these gallon jugs in plastic, or they buy it in these little water bottles. Studies show that that is the absolute cheapest, most chemicalized plastic that they're using to hold your water. So is your water safe? We've talked about this a little bit in the prior video. So when people are buying like that, please, I'm not discouraging buying that water, but that's not long-term storage, and I would challenge you to get it out of there. If you can buy it in other ways, or you have clean filtration where you can just take your own water and store it up in clean glasses or containers, that's best. But the first mistake is we buy plastic containers and think it's going to hold up for long-term storage. If the water container is made for long-term storage and it's plastic, but it's done the right way, it's okay. The problem is when you buy the little gallon jugs at your local grocery store or local Walmart, or you buy the little plastic bottles like the Nestle's or the Ozarks or the Kentwoods or whatever you're purchasing, that's going to last maybe 6 months to maybe 2 years at the most, 6 to 12 to 24 months. And it's going to start breaking down. If you have some of those in your cabinet, I bet you some of them are leaking. And also think about what's seeping in your water with those containers. Now, if that's all you've got, then of course do it. I would say, you know, if you can have any kind of water, you can always boil it, you can always run it through a filter. It's better to have some water than I guess none. And also if you have no access to some of those natural waters, having bottled water is good, but it does not need to be your plan to last forever. So if you're making that mistake now, two things: either start rotating heavy or start getting it into true water storage. We're going to tell you about our water storage, and that way you have an idea of what we're personally using. But if you're buying gallon jugs or you're buying water bottles, learn to rotate very heavy. Label when you bought it, and within 6 months either it needs to be rotated or utilized or taken out of that. So that's the first mistake most people make. They put it in the wrong kind of storage. Also, on another note with that mistake, is a lot of times you're buying tap water from another source. So you may say, I don't want tap water, I want bottled water. Well, most of those bottled waters are just basically bought from cities and municipalities to then turn around and put in their own bottles. If you're buying some kind of Nestle or Dasani, go back to the source, look on the bottle and see actually where it comes from. Most of the time it's just tap water. So if you can store your own tap water up, first of all, you're saving tons of money, and you're not also using this cheap plastic that these companies are bottling their waters in. Think about how many times that's been heated up, cooled down, molded, and not be good for the water. Second mistake would be, where do you store your water? If you have your water in a warehouse or storage facility or garage where it's not in a controlled environment such as temperature, then you're doing a disservice to your water. Now, am I saying that that's a end-all be-all and if you have water there, dump it? No, you can always utilize it. If you're not able to drink it, guess what? It still can be considered what we call gray water, non-drinkable water. We need to flush our commodes. Maybe it's clean enough and we've purified enough to still use for our body. We can still maybe cook in it because we're going to be boiling food. So there's different avenues of utilizing water that may not be in good temperature controlled environments. However, if you can control the temperature or put it in a place that is not damp, not moist, not bright sun and light, and then also is a controlled environment, you are going to do better with water storage than putting it in warehouse or putting it in some kind of non-controlled environment such as a garage or a shop. If that's your only options, by all means do it, but don't make the mistake that needs to be all your water storage outdoors or all your water storage put in a place that is not controlled in temperature or in light. Try to put them in cool, dark places and also a place that you can control the environment. Last mistake we're going to talk about today is not learning how to treat the water or making it better to drink and the quality of it better. No matter what storage you have, no matter if you're getting it out of creeks and rivers, no matter what you're doing and how you're getting your water, if you don't know how to filter it or you don't know how to purify it or you don't know how to treat it, you need to find those steps out. It may be the little treatment tablets and the capsules. A lot of times if you're buying big jugs from companies that specialize in water storage, they even sell you some or even have it as a secondary buy that you need to purchase. It's very good. If you don't have the Sawyer filters or some kind of water filter or a charcoal filter or some kind of reverse osmosis filtration system or some kind of sediment filters on your rain catchment, all those things, by having a lot of water, and if it's not good to drink, it's still going to cause you harm. Think about boiling water. Have you thought about how you can boil water? Well, boiling water is a great way to make sure that water's clean. But if you don't have access to fire or you don't have access to alternative fuel or alternative energy, it's not going to do you any good to say, I'm going to boil water. I've done a video on water treatment and how to make sure you have safe drinking water. Go check that out in our Prepping Stockpile playlist. So that's 3 mistakes that we tend to make. Kind of storage we're putting them in, where we store the water, and also making sure we understand how to treat it. The way we store our water is in stackable water containers. That's just one way. Those are phenomenal. You can purchase those from Legacy Food Stores. That's where I personally get mine. They're big blue jugs. They stack personally. They seal up and they offer just about any and everything you need to when it comes to water storage and also how to get the water safely out of those containers. So I would challenge you to buy a true container that's meant for water storage. Now, say for instance, you don't have the room. Have you thought about doing like a cistern? For instance, when we do rainwater catchment, and we're going to do a whole video series on rainwater catchment very, very soon. But if you're catching it, it needs to make sure that it's deep enough in the ground that it's not getting the environment placed in it, that it's also got a filter on it. And then if it's deep enough in the ground, if you have a cistern that's deep enough in the ground, then it's not being controlled by the weather above. Meaning the temperature in the ground, if it stays at 65 to 75, then you've got a controlled environment. See, that's what we were talking about. If you just have your rainwater catchment sitting outside and there's no way to keep it from, getting cold, getting hot, getting cold, getting hot, then it may not be the best quality water. When if you just bury a hole, put the same container in it, then you may actually be catching the water and being able to preserve it better in the ground. So for people who say, I don't have the storage, I don't have the means, I don't have the place to put it, look at a cistern that you can literally put in the ground, make sure it's deep enough, and you can catch water or conserve water and make sure you have tons of water there. And a good thing about a cistern, most people don't know it's there. So you have hidden water when you need it. Going back to the water storage for in-home use, I like the bricks and I like the stackable units. They make versions that can slide under your bed. They make versions that fit in tighter spots. So look at different options. Don't say you can't store water. Without water, life kind of ceases for you. So water is important, and you have to make sure you're storing it up and using containers meant for water, meant for food grade, meant with no extra chemicals, nothing added. That way it'll be there for you. Now, I've heard people say don't use old glass containers. Well, if you wash them good, you clean them out good, and you have them, upcycle them by keeping tap water in those. That's the cheap and easiest way. I made a video on free preps. That's a great free prep. Taking old mason jars or taking old bottles that were glass and utilizing them with water. Storing them the best place you can, because again, if you can't utilize them for drinking, you still utilize them for other options. We're not talking drinking, but we're talking emergency situation here. If you have a swimming pool, or you have an above ground swimming pool, or you have different troughs and different little catchments outside, some of that water may not be perfect to drink, but at least you would have a way to then catch water to utilize in other means, other ways, maybe to help with flushing commodes like we talked before, maybe to bathe. There's different ways you can use that. So like our pool is a saltwater pool. Now, we love utilizing that. I don't want to drink that, but that is a way that at least we could clean off our body if we ever had to. We could flush commodes if we ever had to. Think through those options and say, you know what, let me think outside the box and let me think how I can use this water. If I'm not able to drink it, not able to boil it, not able to consume it in any way, what other ways do I need water? For instance, our animals, even though I don't feed them that kind of water, my animals can easily drink out of the creek. They can easily drink. I have a dog that loves straight. She will pass up straight, cold, crisp water sitting in her dog bowl to go drink the salt water out of the pool. I don't know why. That means she may need salt water. I don't know, but she'll do that daily. My bees, they feed off that water too. So you get what I'm saying? Those are good assets. Even if they're not for you, they may be for pets. They may be for utilizing in other ways, supplemental use for you. So think outside the box. Think of containers you can hold outside. If you know it's rain coming, grab 5-gallon buckets. If you know that water is safe and you can't catch it for rainwater catchment, maybe it's for your plants. We catch a lot of water just for our plants to make sure that we can feed them. Have you thought about making an aquaponics setup? Catching water and putting it in there for your fish, because then it feeds, the fish are getting fed by the water and some sustainable plants there. However, they're giving you fertilizer, and that water's being able to feed all your plants. So you have a sustainable crop growing at the same time. You could do that indoors. We have ours in a climate controlled environment as well. So you see, you can utilize water in different ways. That's not just, okay, consumption, not just storing in this way. There's different avenues, different ways to be versatile with water, because water is the key for you, for your animals, for your health, for your livelihood. We're hoping this video helped how to store, how not to store, how much water that you're needing, and making sure you're putting it up. There's 8 people in my family. So our goal is to say, okay, if we have 8 people, at minimum, if we're doing 2, 3, 4 gallons a day, that's almost 30 gallons a day of water we have to have for minimal purposes. Now, can we ration deeper and more than that? Yeah, say it's 15 gallons a day. My goal is to look at the well and the rivers. Great. My goal is to look at the filters and the filtration. Great. I love looking at rainwater catchment, catching in a cistern. Great. But then I'm also filling up my well water now and putting it in water storage containers and putting them up in my prepper's pantry and long-term storage. Take the opportunity to do all these steps. Try not to make the mistakes that we've talked about that most people make, so that way you have water sustainable for you, for your animals, for your farm, for your vegetables. Without water, we have nothing. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope this video helped. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.